latest weather, traffic, and news updates online at 560theanswer.com. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
All right, Liz Collin from Alpha News has a new documentary coming up in June called Minnesota Mao. You may remember her work from the fall of Minneapolis. But we're going to start with her about Governor Tim Walz because they had 22 different learning care centers rated and autism centers. And the feds did it, but he claimed credit for it.
We've created additional checks and balances. We've brought on more investigators, more auditors, more law enforcement agencies, as well as an outside firm to take a look at high-risk programs. People who have ripped us off are getting caught, and they are going to jail, just like today. I've said the buck stops with me. And as I know some of you will take that as an open invitation to play politics with every incident of fraud that takes place here in Minnesota, even though I have to tell you, the statistics show it's happening in red states more than here, but so be it.
I just can't take Tampon Tim seriously. Kash Patel pushed back, though, when he was taking credit for those 22 raids, saying, come again? This FBI and DOJ with our DHS partners drafted and executed every search warrant today, but go ahead and take credit for our work while we smoke out the fraud plaguing Minnesota under your governorship. So, and he delivered that comment that you just heard during his State of the State, which will be his last one because he's going bye-bye and not too soon. So with that, let's welcome to the program Liz Collin. She's a multi-Emmy Award-winning reporter and anchor, now in charge of Alpha News, and she is the producer, as we mentioned, of The Fall of Minneapolis, which everyone should see, and I wish every child in schools in America could see it as well. And they also have Minnesota Mao coming out. Good morning, Liz. How are you?
Good morning, Amy and Jeannie. Doing well. Never a dull moment here. Hope you guys are doing well. Also, thanks for having me back on.
So I know Nick Shirley brought it to national attention that there was Somalian fraud going on at learning centers and autism centers. But CCO had done a story on it in 2018, I believe. But why did it take him to catapult it to the level where people were actually paying attention?
Yeah, you know, the fraud situation in Minnesota has been news, I would say, for a decade. I encourage listeners to head to alphanews.org. Right at the top, there's fraud in Minnesota. We have a page, all of our stories. It's literally, I think, hundreds. I mean, well over, I would say, 400 at this point, stories that date back decades. But it received a lot of attention, I will say, back when charges were first filed in 2022, and this is when 90 people were charged with future fraud. Those prosecutions are still going on in court. I think they've sentenced so far about 70 of those. I think it's like 87% are Somali defendants related to that fraud. But then you had come to town, and you know, kind of his style and everything certainly got people's attention. But I'll tell you, we've been covering the empty autism centers, daycares before that. I commend him. I just don't think without independent journalism, you always have the local media, the mainstream media in Minnesota sort of downplay this. And it really, did take an outsider, I think, to come in and get this the attention that it has deserved for such a long time.
But knowing that, then it's highly problematic for Walz to now waltz in and essentially claim credit for cleaning up the fraud when you're saying, hey, 2022, we were highlighting this. Even before that, we were highlighting this. Multiple articles highlighting this. And here, how can he's not going to get away with it, that claim that he's cleaning it up.
Nothing really ceases to amaze us when it comes to what comes out of the mouth of Governor Tim Walz. It's kind of like opposite day usually when he is talking. Yeah. From what we've gathered, the evidence just doesn't point, to reality. I mean, they are not the facts at all with what has taken place. But he did decide, not to. He basically announced that he was running, and then has not to run, and I think there's definitely a reason for that. We've been highlighting in our reporting the connections to Attorney General Keith Ellison, the connections to Governor Walz. Again, you have campaign donations going to so many of these people from the actual fraudsters themselves. Not only that, Amy, but just incredible amount of information that shows state workers trying to get in touch with the governor, trying to get in touch with the Attorney General, saying there are so many red flags here. This is what's going on. These programs are essentially designed for fraud. Emails not returned, phone calls not returned. Not only that, the stories of retaliation against these whistleblowers is something I've never seen before in my 20 years as a reporter. Some people marched out of the building, just demoralized, demoted in some cases. So again, there's a reason that Walz is not running again.
Well, Brandon Gill's one of my favorite congressmen. Here's him questioning Walz on that fraud because this is so glaringly, obviously problematic. Take a listen.
When did you become governor?
In January of 2019.
In 2019. Okay, so using 2018 as a baseline, do you know what that program paid in Medicaid claims?
I do not, Congressman.
It's about $671,000. Do you know what that program paid in Medicaid claims in 2024?
I don't have the number in front of me.
$342 million. That's about a 500x increase over 6 years. Was there 500 times the number of autism patients in that time period?
I couldn't speak specifically to it, but I will say, Congressman, that
doesn't sound reasonable, right? You don't think there was a 500x increase in the number of autism patients in 6 years, right?
Correct, and that's why we ordered on-site visits starting back in 2024.
So we agree that doesn't sound reasonable.
I mean, so obvious. This is ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah, that program, it really is something that, so the payout is $38 million. It's one that I highlight quite a bit also. $38 million, the payout is in 2020. It goes to $324 million in 2024. So 4 years' time, from $38 million to $324 million. All of a sudden, everyone has autism, and nobody notices. I mean, of course, not people and saying things along the way, but nothing was done about it.
Well, I mean, when Governor Walz started, he had $1 billion+ surplus, and now he's $16 billion in the hole. And part of it, I believe, is because of this fraudulent scheme. So of those 90 people that were arrested, how many of them are Somalians? And is there any chance any of them would be deported?
Well, that's what's interesting. So of the 90, I think it's like 87% or so are Somali. And there have been charges since then related to other frauds, one-off here and there. I think these 22 raids that happened this week will lead to more, and again, these are just search warrants that were executed. There haven't been arrest warrants yet. We have been hearing that, some kids have been pulled out of school as of this point and perhaps have returned to Somalia. So those are things we're checking out. But I do think that there's, going to be scale charges. But, we even talk about these 22 sites. We've heard from state investigators that there are 5,000 residential addresses in Minnesota are under investigation currently. So that I think you get a better idea of just how massive this is. This is still ongoing. I mean, it's very much in your face, out in the open. And we saw even they come in with the search warrants, and you saw some kids showing up the next day at these daycares that have sat quiet for so long.
Well, I heard they were hired.
Went viral.
Yeah, sorry for interrupting. Yeah. I heard that they were hired actors. Is that true?
That was actually a Craigslist posting that we wrote a story about over at Alpha News. It was a real Craigslist posting that they were looking for children that they would pay to just show up at these locations. But we saw this happen after Nick Shirley. There seemed like a lot of staging going on at these businesses, and then that went away again. Then these search warrants happened. We see the pickup in business again. So we'll see.
Well, I consider this investigation the whole. Well, actually, what you guys did with the fall of Minneapolis, how you exposed what was going on there with the whole DEI culture overtaking your law enforcement agencies and the George Floyd riots. the COVID problems that we now have, another indictment now of Fauci assistant, the SPLC hoax, this whole fraudulent thing. We are undergoing a sort of counter-revolutionary time in America. This is a reset of government and its responsibilities to the citizens and their responsibility to check their government. And I think that this type of investigation, this fraud specifically, what you're doing with your new documentary as well, which I want to hear more about, I think this is revolutionary in America. And finally, it is coming to bear, because for too long, too many people have trust is what it should have always been.
Yeah, there's really some more bombshell testimony that took place this week at the state capitol in St. Paul. You had another whistleblower. This is a DHS fraud investigator, essentially. He spent 30 years in the Minnesota State Patrol and then went over to investigate fraud. But he talked about, in doing interviews with folks, that they were refugee camps in Kenya, and they were being told, you know what, go to Minnesota. It's the easiest to perpetuate in that state. So that's where so many of them came. They came here for a reason. And this was sort of a system that was set up for them from the start.
What about Ilhan Omar? I mean, she was a millionaire. Now she's not. Then she was. And now she isn't. What happened to this alleged winery? Because it didn't look like they were producing any grapes products, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. The winery itself looked like an office building.
Yep.
I mean, nobody found the. It was really incredible. Yeah. There have been so many stories. Probably the only real outlet in Minnesota that has ever reported on the fraud that has plagued her from so many, marrying her, all of the laying out all the evidence that she brother to make him a U.S. citizen, laying out all the evidence that she's even a U.S. citizen at all. She changed her birth date years ago after one of her. Basically, someone running against her, this was for Congress back in the day, called her out and said, your citizenship story isn't matching the paperwork. And then she changes her birth date on all of her sites, which is really remarkable. But I don't think, the Trump administration seems to call her out at every turn. I'm not sure if they'd be doing that. There wasn't something, if she wasn't under some kind of investigation. We heard from Vice President J.D. Vance that they are looking at Walz and Ellison. He said that yesterday. And, perhaps their relation to that as well. But I don't think Congresswoman Ilhan Omar is out of the mix either. All
right. Before we get to your new documentary, Minnesota Mao, in regards to Tim Walz, how is Derek Chauvin doing? Because I know he was stabbed 22 times and he survived. Is there any chance that he will get out of jail, that they will drop the charges against him?
Well, currently, the best chance he has, a judge is deciding this now, whether or not to grant him a new trial, an actual fair trial, which anyone who really knows the facts, they know that it was nothing more than a show trial place in Hennepin County to put him behind bars. But that decision is expected soon. I know I've been on before, Amy, but we were sued for the fall of Minneapolis and for my book, Lying. That didn't go very well. And in fact, not only was the case dismissed, they had to pay our attorney's fees. And basically everything that was introduced in our case, mounds and mounds of evidence that everything is truthful in the book and the documentary, that used in Derek Chauvin's appeal. So that kind of worked out in I'm hoping for good, and can be used, because I think even Derek wasn't aware of just the depth of all of this and the corruption that was taking place behind the scenes.
Wow. What about, is he doing okay? Do you still talk to him? Are you still in conversations with him?
Yeah, I think we are, and he actually 50. He kind of obviously terrible way, turning 50, but a milestone. But I think that Derek does still have left in him. He's been moved a few times, after that horrific. They definitely. This guy tried to kill him. There's no doubt about it. He has to face any consequences for this attempted murder that took and he mysteriously has disappeared, not in the custody of the Federal Bureau of Prisons. It's John Turskak is his name. So I think Derek is upset about that, but I think just every day, lives his life looking over his shoulder, still is, working for some kind of justice.
Well, can you tell us about your new documentary? I was so impressed with your first one, and looking forward to watching this one.
Yeah, here's a trailer. We won't play all 3 minutes, but here's just so you can get a taste of what's going to be coming out in June.
Governor Tim Walz.
Tim Walz.
Governor Tim Walz.
Tim Walz.
Tim Walz.
Tim Walz.
Governor Tim Walz of the great state of Minnesota.
I lived in China. I've been there about 30 times.
Tim was snapping up dozens of copies of Mao's Little Red Book. It's not just a political treatise. It's the daily devotional of the Chinese Communist Party. The inscription on the inside is, Mao's words bring us joy.
She's bringing us a politics of joy.
They're trying to steal the joy from this country, bringing back the joy.
You said earlier that ICE agents were a modern-day Gestapo. Would you like to recant that statement?
When I said President Trump was using them as his modern-day Gestapo. Donald Trump's modern-day Gestapo is scooping folks up off the streets. Many of us grew up reading that story of Anne Frank. Somebody's going to write that children's story about Minnesota.
For communism to work, you have to erase the country's identity and history, and that's what Mao did. Tim Walz is doing it here.
It's great, and we'll tweet out the trailer so you can see it. But what motivated you to do this documentary entitled Minnesota's Mao?
Yeah, so we had so much information on Walz. We were really out there years before the national media kind of picked up our stories, frankly, when he went to the national stage as the VP pick. But the focus on Tim Walz and his lifelong lies and taking a look at these deep connections to China. They were kind of glossed over, I think. But we have some pretty incredible interviews, I'm not going to lie, with people that went to China with him, what was really going on, these political policies and maneuvers he's made in Minnesota. Where do they come from? Straight from Mao. He has a love of communism, and we've seen that over and over again in Minnesota. He now is very out there talking about he's very anti-American. If you've heard his messaging, just these radical changes that he's made. So, stepping forward, telling stories. We have some Democrats in the documentary as well, going like something more. He's actually kind of been disowned, frankly, by many of them in Minnesota after everything that's taken place here. And also some interesting connections between China and Somalia. And we get into the fraud and just different layers of things that I don't think people have ever seen before. So it's MinnesotaMao.com. June 4th is when it comes out. There's a reason for that. It is the anniversary of Tiananmen Square.
Oh.
And
he was there, wasn't he?
No, this is his wedding anniversary is June 4th. Gwen said he picked that date, so it's a date that he would remember. This is literally what she said. And this wedding anniversary is June 4th. So much more to come in the documentary, though, and people can really take a look at what has gone on in Minnesota under his so-called leadership.
She is Liz Collin. You can follow her on X at Liz Collin. She is a producer of The Fall of Minneapolis and the soon-to-be-released Minnesota Mao. Find more information. You can watch it for free at MinnesotaMao.com. Liz, thank you so much for joining us, and always informative when you come on, so we appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you very much for having me, Amy. Good to talk to you guys, and hope you have a good day.
You too, and she joined us on the Alpha Wealth Group answer line.
Before you see it on TV, share it on Facebook, or read about it in the paper. Hear it here first. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer. Don't miss In Grace with Pastor Jim Scudder Jr. Now heard on Sunday mornings at 7:30. Tune in and find hope as Jim Scudder